All right. Hello and welcome to a conversation on gig economy. My name is Ciara Ladroma, and it is an absolute honor to be here to share space with you, along with our featured guest, Neena Massey. There will be certain slides that I will pause longer than others to allow attendees to read the content before continuing the conversation. And as for all webcasts and conversations, I invite you to relax, enjoy yourself, and use this time to just really slow down from your regular pace of the day. And before we start, I do want to share that this webcast was funded by the U.S. Department of Education Rehabilitation Services Administration. The ideas, opinions, and conclusions expressed do not represent recommendations, endorsements, or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. I'm going to give us a quick overview of the gig economy before we dive into conversation with Neena and her experience and knowledge as a gig worker. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what we're going to learn today. Together, we're going to define gig economy and provide examples of what gig economy is. I'm confident that many, if not all of you, would have participated in some form of gig economy in your careers, and also recognize just how relevant gig economy is in our daily lives. We'll chat about the benefits of being a gig worker and how it is a viable option of self-employment that allows for flexibility and accommodations. We'll briefly chat about the relevance of gig economy in today's workforce. And then I'll introduce us to Neena Massey, and we'll shift into an interactive conversation around the work that she does as a Lyft driver and freelance artist. So do any of these logos look familiar to you? Have any of you ever caught a ride with Uber or Lyft? Have you ever posted your skills on Fiverr or looked for an independent contractor on Fiverr to help you with a project that was just outside of your wheelhouse? Have you ever stayed at an Airbnb while on vacation? What about getting your groceries delivered? For those of you with animals, have you ever used an app like Rover to find a dog sitter in your area? These are all examples of gig work within the gig economy. So let's talk about what is gig economy. The IRS defines the gig economy as activity where people earn income providing on-demand work, services, or goods, often through an app or website. I'm sure you've heard of that saying, there's an app for that. In gig work, it's true because there really probably is an app for that. An app to run your errands, deliver items to and for you, take care of your animals, watch your home, drive and pick you up from places, complete professional projects, anywhere from website design to freelance writing, to even renovations to your home. There is an app for that. These digital platforms, often known as apps, serve as that middle person between consumers and businesses and allow us to see what is out there, what we want, and what we didn't know we needed or wanted. So the gig economy is characterized by short-term, flexible jobs that businesses offer to freelancers and independent contractors instead of traditional full-time roles. Take a quick look at this list of examples of gig work. Have you seen or used any of these consumers or businesses before? How many of these have you used as even a source of income? And how many of these are you familiar with? The message here is that gig economy is part of our worlds more than we often realize, while also bringing so much convenience to our lives as well. Gig workers can be known as freelancers, independent contractors, project-based workers, contract-based workers, temporary hires, and even part-time hires. We've talked about the convenience and presence of gig work in our lives, but why does gig work even exist? And why do people want to do gig work and hire gig workers? The why behind gig work is definitely worth a conversation. So let's think about it a little bit. Gig work has been around for years, but the recent pandemic and advancements in technology have invited and allowed the workforce to become extremely mobile. Being self-employed is not a new concept. We've been doing this as small business owners entrepreneurs and creators for centuries. What has changed is the number of people who have started doing gig work throughout the years. And remember, there's an app for that. This means that there are more apps, more digital platforms that have the primary service of making something easier for us. This means more people are working remotely and wanting to work remotely, which then expands the reach for those with specific skills to serve more people and for businesses to have a wider pool of talent to select from. The pandemic has been a big reason for the increase of gig work. 23 million new participants joined the pool of gig workers in the US during the pandemic, and 75% began freelancing to achieve financial stability during COVID. Here are some interesting statistics that I'd like to personally keep my eye on as time passes. In 2022, Upwork conducted a survey sharing that 60 million Americans had done some sort of freelancing within the last year. In 2023, Upwork conducted a survey finding that freelance gig economy workers contributed around $1.27 trillion to the US economy. In 2024, there are approximately 64 million Americans who consider themselves gig workers. In 2023, a larger share of people with a disability are self-employed than those with no disability, with the numbers being approximately 8.4% compared to 5.9%. So by 2027, there will supposedly be 86.5 million freelancers or more in the US. And just a reminder, a freelancer is an independent laborer who earns wages on a per job or per task basis, typically for short-term work. The gig economy represents a large part of the workforce and spans virtually every industry. And again, gig work or being self-employed or being creators, that's not a new concept. We've been doing this for years. The biggest change is the drastic number of people who have joined the gig economy. So let's talk about why employers and businesses are looking more and more at gig workers to fulfill tasks, demands, and responsibilities. Companies are turning to freelancers for jobs that are not directly related to their industry in a very cost-effective way. Typically, gig workers get paid less than salaried employees for doing the same thing. This is because gig workers are contracted per project or task, and gig workers don't typically work 40 hours a week, and oftentimes, contracts include an agreement on hours worked. Gig workers don't receive benefits from employers such as health benefits or retirement plans. Employers have no overhead costs to pay for gig workers, and this is typically because gig workers work remotely or rarely and maybe never go to the actual location of the employer. The gig work economy creates a large pool of candidates for employers with no geographical limitations. So for an example, a business in Maine can hire a gig worker who lives in Arizona to complete a website design at, let's say, $45 an hour. Gig work allows employers to identify their needs and fill them in that moment. So let's say a law firm realizes that they need a better online presence and someone to help with their billing. They don't want to hire a full-time employee for that online presence, and they can't seem to just find anyone who can fulfill their needs for their billing tasks. So they refer to apps and platforms like Fiverr, Freelancer, or Upwork to find their exact needs at their budgeted costs. Now we know the advantages of businesses hiring gig workers, but now let's talk about why people want to be gig workers. Gig work allows extreme flexibility, independence, and accommodations. Gig workers have the power to choose what their work is, where they work, and when work ends. This also leads to having control of how much money they can and want to make. Gig work allows people to have another source of income. Many gig workers have other primary jobs. And on the other side of that, many gig workers make freelancing and gig work their full-time primary jobs. Gig work allows you to grow your skill sets, your portfolio, and experience for every single project or task completed. So resumes and work experience continue to grow in such creative ways with gig work because workers have exposure to more opportunities. Just as gig workers have the independence and flexibility to choose when and where they work, they also get the power to say yes or no to projects and tasks. Gig work also has the fuel of entrepreneurship, especially with those gig workers who have made gig work their primary source of income. Self-employment can be such a viable and successful option for people with disabilities. Of course, with the consideration that the gig fits the person's skills, it's feasible or they're able to make money, and that they have the supports needed to be successful. Self-employment offers flexibility in schedules for those who may have a structured health or care routine, and it allows for the ability to adapt work capacity based on someone's disability or needs. It allows the ability to make more money. Transportation may also be easier to navigate, and so many other factors can be customized to the person's success and needs. Let's talk about the potential stressors that come with gig economy for gig workers. Gig workers have the flexibility to choose when, where, and what they work on, but that comes with the stress of always having to find the next gig or project. This leads to the strong possibility of not having a fixed income to lean on. As we can all imagine, this can cause some big stress. Gig workers do not receive healthcare benefits or other employee benefits from employers that they contract with. This means gig workers must secure their own health insurance and start their own retirement accounts if they want to. Gig workers do pay taxes because gig work income is taxable, which means gig workers must maintain strong records of their income and expenses in order to complete taxes every single year. They do not have an employer that automatically takes care of this for them, which means gig workers must pay their own taxes. As far as marketing, gig workers have a level of responsibility to market themselves in order to stand out with competition who offer the same or similar services. This could be asking customers for great ratings on driver and delivery services, or creating a LinkedIn and networking for professional skill sets and services. Gig workers are responsible for finding each of their future gigs by marketing and learning how to navigate hosting apps and digital platforms. A combination of these factors, plus limited time or no time with colleagues or team members, can also lead to a level of burnout and exhaustion for gig workers. So how do we find out if a gig worker is a wage employee or self-employed? First, it's important to never assume a gig worker is self-employed. We'll also want to see if someone received a W-2 or a 1099. Wage employees are provided a W-2 from their employers during tax season, and gig workers, or those who are self-employed, will receive a 1099 form from their partnered businesses. One of the easiest ways to support someone finding out if they are a wage employee or self-employed is to contact the business or employer to confirm the status of their work. Another great way is to read the contract. Whether driving or delivering with an app, or working as a freelancer for a business to complete some sort of professional service, there's always fine print. Read, review, and understand contracts, policies, and processes. Let's talk about benefits again. Gig workers do not receive benefits from employers. So wage employers who work as employees of the business or company typically do. Whether or not someone receives benefits can be a big indicator of someone's work status. And last but not least, taxes. Remember, all gig income is taxable, and gig workers must maintain strong records of income and expenses for reporting purposes. Wage employees have taxes and fees taken out of their paychecks from their employer. Gig workers do not. So for example, if Jason is a gig worker and it's agreed upon that he will be paid $5,000 at project completion, then he will get exactly that. It will be up to Jason to track his income and expenses for him to be ready for tax season. So this just lists a few differences between employee and gig worker status. So on the left side under employee, it says here They will withhold federal income tax, Social Security, and Medicare taxes from employee wages. W-2 forms will be distributed at tax season, and employees won't be able to deduct business expenses. And as a gig worker, they may be able to deduct business expenses. They will receive 1099 forms during tax season. They will be responsible for self-employment taxes. And Social Security considers gig workers as self-employed beneficiaries. So let's talk about business plans. They are equally important for gig workers as they are for shop owners or any other product or service-based entrepreneur. It is great to assemble a team of natural supports and professionals to create a business plan that meets the needs and skill sets of the potential business owner or gig worker. This customer, along with their support team, can identify types of gig work and projects based off of their skills, preferred activities and tasks, and environments where they excel. Contracts are created to protect both the customer and the business. It's important to review contracts provided by gig platforms, but to also create, review, and update contracts to give to businesses if hired for professional services. It is so important for gig workers to understand how they will be paid. This is typically communicated through the agreed contract or host platform. There can be automated payments, tips, and checks. It's incredibly important to keep track of income made plus any expenses paid, as this will better prepare gig workers for tax season. Remember, gig work allows for independence and flexibility in schedules, but this means time management and scheduling to allow for other responsibilities of prevention of burnout is crucial. A business plan can provide an outline of a general schedule for a gig worker. A business plan for a gig worker is important to lay out and forecast financial projections. Whether someone uses a platform with fixed rates or sets their own rates as a freelancer, financial forecasting is important to understand the feasibility of the work. Financial projections and upkeep will also play a crucial role in understanding public benefits and the impact of income from gig work. It will also be helpful in understanding how many projects or gigs a customer will aim to complete towards to meet their financial goals. Technology is almost a necessity when it comes to gig work. This can be anything from needing a smartphone and downloading apps, or finding assistive technology to complete certain tasks or projects. A customer and their support team can list the necessary tech items on the business plan needed in order for the customer to be successful. As always, updating the business plan is key, and business plans should not stay the same for long. Gig work allows for growth in skill sets and portfolios. So reviewing and updating the business plan allows the customer and team to hit and create new milestones for growth. Because we'll be talking a little bit about Lyft here in a little bit, I just wanted to share some of these statistics. So Lyft started June 9th, 2012, and is headquartered in San Francisco, and is listed under the industry of ride hailing. It has over 21.4 million active riders in 2023 and has generated $4.4 billion in revenue in 2023. And as of this year, Lyft has over 2 million drivers. And Lyft uses a digital platform or an app for riders and drivers to book, confirm, and communicate services. Okay, time to get into the best part of today's webcast. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you all to Neena Massey. Neena is based in Colorado and is a first-generation Pakistani American. Neena is a Lyft driver who has completed over 12,000 rides. Along with driving for Lyft, Neena is also a performance artist and an artistic community organizer. We'll be spending the rest of our time together, learning about Neena and her experience as a gig worker. And then you can take a picture or write down Neena's contact info here if you are interested in learning more about her work as a gig worker. All right. Hi, Neena.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Ciara. I appreciate this opportunity.
I'm going to leave this screen up probably for another minute, and then I'll go ahead and stop sharing it. But I would love if you could just introduce yourself and maybe a little bit of a background on who you are personally and professionally.
Sure, my name's Neena Massey. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I was born and raised here. I have a son. My family all lives here as well. I love to do art related things even in my free time. So, I'm a performance artist, so I've been formally taught dance and choreography. But I like to dabble in other types of art as well. So I do a lot of, lately been doing more visual art, write a lot of poetry, and do a lot of creative things like cooking and just try to take that creativity everywhere in all parts of life.
And I would love if you could share what led you to gig economy? Because Neena, we have known each other for a little while now, and you have shared your extensive education and your employment history. But what led you to gig economy?
So when I was in grad school, I was in grad school from about 2016-ish to 2019. And when I was in my thesis year, so the last year of grad school, I needed to find a way to make money because the school where I used to work closed down. I was a teacher prior to being a Lyft driver or a professional performance artist. And that was my career. I was a Montessori teacher. So, it was shocking, but I had started grad school. But then towards the end of grad school, I was like, okay, I need to do something while I'm still writing my thesis. And someone had suggested being a driver. And so I tried it. My vehicle was fairly new and it was a great gig for me. It turned out that I had already loved driving even before I became a Lyft driver. But I didn't realize how much I was going to love driving passengers and having conversations and meeting people. And so it turned into a really good job for me through that time. And then it just continued because after graduation, the pandemic started right after that almost. And, I saw a lot of the art world kind of shut down in terms of not having live gigs and not having opportunities to go and do artistic expression the way that I knew how to do it. So I was like, well, I'll just drive and see what happens if I drive through the pandemic. And it turned out to be a really excellent learning experience for me too, because I talked to people who were, the essential workers. They were a lot of my passengers. I talked to people who really just didn't have an outlet because everything had been shut down. Some of the people I talked to in my car were like, you're the only person I've talked to this whole week. So I found it to be extremely, um, just it felt good to be driving during that time. And I felt like I was really helping. We were considered essential workers too. So I really felt like I was helping in a time that was just so unknown for everyone and just kind of learning about people's emotional state and learning how everybody was dealing with it. Some people found it fine to go through that situation. Some people were in complete devastation. So I just saw the whole gamut of things that happened during that. And it was through being a Lyft driver that I was able to experience that.
That is so beautiful that you share that because that isolation from the pandemic hit us all, right? Like the pandemic was not only certain demographics, it was for the entire world.
Mhm.
Um, and Lyft drivers and rideshare drivers are essential workers. And I know so many people who relied on these gig economy platforms to get food, to get to
Right.
and places to get medicine. Like it's a true need
Mhm.
um in and out of a pandemic situation.
Mhm.
So can you share how the gig economy truly worked out for you, your lifestyle, your schedule, your disabilities, and just how and why you just continued doing that instead of going towards more traditional employment?
Sure, I'm going to break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
So, in terms of lifestyle, I just really like the flexibility of being able to pick my own schedule, drive when I want to, do other things when I don't want to drive. When I was finishing grad school and then like right after that, I needed to drive quite a bit
Mm.
just to be able to keep up with my financial responsibilities. A lot of things had just taken a back seat while I was in grad school. And I'm so glad that I went through the experience of getting that graduate degree because that had always been a dream of mine. However, there were just a lot of things that needed to get done financially. And I worked a lot. I worked maybe 8 hours a day at that time. So that was another big thing. It helped me really just so quickly be able to catch up financially. And I don't mean quickly in terms of like few months, but a few years, a couple of years, because the way that gig economy pays you is like you get paid instantly. So you can get paid that day, that week, you can arrange it however you'd like. So it really helped me out financially. And then you said in terms of disability. So in 2017, I was diagnosed with 3 autoimmune illnesses, kind of around the same time I started grad school. And so the first couple years of grad school, I wasn't working and it wasn't flaring me in terms of my body issues. Being in grad school was kind of just a nice little time where I wasn't really putting any pressure on my body. And in fact, I was actually developing choreography to heal these things that my body was going through. So those first few years, I didn't experience much in terms of getting flares. But when I was driving a lot for those next few years, like let's say 2018 through 2021, my situation got worse with my body. It just was like having a lot more chronic pain, a lot more flares. I noticed driving would kind of make it a lot worse. So I had to find a way to really start going back into my art because I knew that my art would really help me physically, emotionally, and everything. And I didn't want to give up driving, but I just had to find a way to balance that. So in 2021, I started going more towards my art dreams, and so I started a community gathering that brought people together from the school where I used to work and ended up being a really healing situation for everyone there because when the school shut down, everybody had just gone their own way, just kind of suddenly got dispersed. And so that was a really nice thing that I added in 2021. And then 2022, I had another community gathering. And then around 2023-ish, I started doing my performance art and brought that back in. And so I went to New York, which is where I used to perform before the pandemic, and did a performance in 2023. And then some local things as well. Every time I had a community gathering, I threw in a little bit of performance art, but not much, just a little bit. And so now in 2024, I've done more performances here locally. So I feel like there's a lot more balance going on. I stopped driving as much just for my own physical reasons, so that my flares wouldn't get worse. And then I started to do more art and healing types of work. So the good news is I'm actually feeling really good right now. Those were some tough years I had to endure. I don't regret it though, because it really helped me catch up financially. And like I said, I got to learn a lot about people and everything that was going on in the pandemic. But I just feel like the shift of getting back into my art has been so healing for me, and I'm really excited to work with others that could benefit from that too.
Thank you for sharing that. How would you compare traditional employment with your current gig economy work. I know that you had a pretty extensive education career in education, and then you've mentioned before, and it still stays in my mind, that as a Lyft driver, you had made more money than
Yes.
your previous careers. Please share more about that.
I mean, it was so true because I think with driving, not only did I have a higher per hour rate if I were to break it down like that, but also just the ability to work more. Like, when I was a teacher, I did that for 15 plus years, and it was a year-round situation. So I was working for whatever, base pay that teachers make year round and then taking work home and then working, I was also the choir person and I taught performance art. So I was also taking kids out to do gigs, but I wasn't getting paid or compensated extra for that. I was just getting my base regular teaching salary. So once I started working for Lyft, not only was I able to work more hours and just kind of like plan to make more money, but like people were giving me tips. People were, just very appreciative in a different way than I had ever experienced as being a teacher, which is sad because my heart really goes out to teachers because it's a really tough job. Not only is it physically demanding, but it's also very mentally and emotionally demanding. And I mean, we're teaching the children, it's the future. So I wish there were more benefits and perks and things like that given to, especially to educators.
Mhm.
Uh, but hopefully that day will come and we'll see that. But we're not there yet.
I agree with you. I hope that does come.
Mm.
Um, all right. So there is, or I know that there is some concern around safety when it comes to being a Lyft or an Uber driver or a rideshare driver. Can you speak on that, as there may be some teams watching that someone may be interested in that, but there just might be some of that hesitancy of, I'm just not sure if you're going to be safe. How have you stayed safe, or what has been your experience around safety?
Well, I do take safety very seriously for myself and for my passengers. So that's like my first and foremost like intention when I'm driving. I think what's helped me a lot probably has been my educational background because I was teaching kids and you have to be very in the moment with children. You have to be very like, okay, we're not doing that right now. Or you know what I mean? Just like you have to correct things kind of instantly. And so I just have this awareness of like what's okay to do in the car and what's not. And so once people know that about me, they don't even try to like cross that. But until they know that, they don't, they're just like, maybe I could do this or maybe I could do that. And then once I let them know, no, that's not what we're doing. And I'm really nice about it too. I'm not really mean about it. I'm just like, that's not what I'm doing. But if they'll say, well, other drivers let me do that. And I'll say, okay, you can go have another driver drive you because I have a really high expectation of safety in my car. A lot of female passengers ask me like, how do you feel driving at night and are you sure you feel okay about it? And I don't drive that late at night. That's another thing. I drive nights though. That's when I feel like there's less traffic. That's another safety thing. I try to drive when there's not as much traffic and not as much congestion on the road. So, evenings are really good. And maybe I'm not seeing that high of other like traffic or maybe possibility of rides, but there's enough rides for me at that time where I'm constantly busy. So I think that's another safety feature that I take into account. So it's kind of like having an awareness of people's tendencies and letting them know what's okay and what's not. Time of day matters. And then also, I think just this kind of like I talk to them a lot. I talk to people a lot. So when you talk to people, you kind of you're more in tune with them. So I'm just like always aware of what's going on with my passengers. Those are the things that have helped me. But I mean, safety is one of those things that I take extremely seriously. So I'm
Mhm.
glad you asked.
Yeah. It sounds like you have found the ideal times and conditions that work best for you, but have also um, just practiced that confidence in setting those boundaries and just communication lines with all riders. It's really nice.
Well, also Lyft has a feature in their app where it's like if it's an emergency, you can just click this button and that someone will be either calling you or they can have someone come out to meet you if something happens to your car. So like Lyft has a lot of like safety features in place, which is also really big. One thing I love also that Lyft does is they have partnerships with like the suicide hotline or like different agencies that help people. So if you have a feeling that like your passenger is going through something and you can't help them in that capacity, they offer these hotlines, and I've given those to my passengers a lot.
Mm, I
Mm,
love that. I did not know about that.
mm.
Um, okay, so let's talk about vocational rehabilitation. Can you share with me how you have worked with Voc Rehab?
So Voc Rehab has been in my life for about over a year now. And, when I first started working with Voc Rehab, I was like, I want to start a business and I'm dealing with these disabilities and, I have this going on. And so it really was a huge, like the first year was almost entirely research. And there were things that my counselor gave me to do, like tasks. One of them was like an entrepreneurial checklist, and it was the series of questions that were very, very thorough. I answered them very thoroughly, and she's like, wow, you write a lot. But that's how I process when I write. I process as I write. So that was a very extensive first thing, was to see like the questions were like, really, is this what you want? Here are the pitfalls that could happen in being an entrepreneur. Is this like in dealing with disability? Is this really what you want to do? There was also a self-employment questionnaire. So these were two different worksheets, similar but different questions. And so that took some time to fill out. And I really just had to dig very deep and see what it is that I want. I had put out there that I wanted to become a life coach or maybe a nutritionist because I was trying to figure out what I could do that would be suitable for people that have gone through that, how I can help people that have gone through what I've gone through with autoimmunity, the changing mobility stuff, the changing fatigue and all of the things. And so that year of research really helped me hone in on what I thought I could help people most with. And it turned out that I had to meet with a couple. My counselor brought in some other specialists from Voc Rehab to like really help us hash this out. Because she was like, I don't want to discourage you from wanting to be an entrepreneur, but I also want to caution you that there's a like if you go and get a nutritionist, let's say certificate or a life coach certificate, you're still going to end up having to market and figure out how to get clients. And that was always the question we kind of kept asking. So that's when that clicked for me. That really did, because I was like, I'd rather be using that time to actually help people, if I could. I realized that even with being an artist, there's a lot of marketing that needs to happen, but with like really specializing in people's health issues, we thought it would be just really good to go get a mental health license. So that's what I'm doing, and Voc Rehab is going to help me do that.
Wonderful. And then can you share a little bit more about creating a business plan?
Yeah, so when you were talking earlier about business plans, I noticed it was related to the gig economy.
Mhm.
And I think that when I created my business plan, it was kind of towards the end of 2023. And that was after doing all this research with Voc Rehab. And I really just wanted to see how I could put together a plan that would include, I don't have Lyft driver on there because that job is so, it's something that's so automatic for me, and like it's very predictable in terms of what I can expect from that. So on that business plan, I have three components. One is working with clients that would need help, maybe more in terms of autoimmunity that I can help them with this therapeutic license. The second part of it is the performance art and workshops. And then the third part of it is this community gathering that I've been developing. And eventually that's going to become a place where people who I'm working with in these other two categories can go. And we can showcase our art and showcase whatever we want and just build a community annually. Right now, it's my school and the people that work there. And it's, the community gathering is very much about restoring the Chicano artwork that was erased when our school closed and that whole area of Denver. And so as time goes and as I get these skills and everything, it's going to be more inclusive and more sort of nuanced towards people who have autoimmunity. And so that's going to be an exciting thing. And
I
that's,
can't wait to see how you grow all of this.
thank you. Well, you're invited to any and all of these
Yes.
things.
Please
You
send
know
me
that.
updates and such. I would love to attend any virtual gathering as well.
Well,
Okay.
the workshops are probably going to be virtual. So, these workshops that I'm creating one right now that the performance I just did was about healing the heart chakra. And it was a performance art piece about that. And turns out I broke it down into several pieces that can be easily deliverable in a workshop. And I also polled the people at the gathering and asked them if they would like, if that's something that sounded interesting to learn more about in a workshop setting. And they said yes. So that will be coming up
Yes, please send it to me. Um,
first.
okay, so can you share, I know that you are still navigating public benefits, but can you share how you just like reporting and tracking your income and just more about how you have worked with a benefits planner and things like that?
So far, I haven't worked exclusively with a benefits planner just because I was so recently awarded with SSDI. So that will be new. That will be a new experience, but I've been keeping track of my expenses just because of my business with Lyft.
Mhm.
And also, I mean, I consider that my business. It's like, it's kind of the stage before the art practice because being a Lyft driver taught me all about how to be a business owner. So that's why I know I can do it.
Mm.
Like I kept track of my expenses, I made budgets, I knew when to pay what and what I was able to deduct. So I have been keeping really close track of my expenses and miles. That's another thing. Lyft also keeps track of miles for you. So, but I keep track of my personal miles and then I also keep track of miles that I do for my art practice. So I'm doing a lot of tracking and it really comes in handy during tax time because it's already been done throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I feel like being a Lyft driver really taught me how to be so careful about all of this. And when I work with a business planner, I, want to find out how to, or did I say business planner? I meant benefits planner. I really want to really learn how to continue to be working and being productive while, having to be on different programs that like SSDI, for example. So that will be a really interesting journey. I've
Amazing.
also learned a lot with NDI. Like I've attended enough workshops and a lot of their like webinars and everything that they offer online, where a lot of information has been given through NDI. So I feel like I have more of a heads up, and then also worked with Molly a couple times at Griffin Hammis. So I feel like NDI and Griffin Hammis has really prepared me for what's coming next. And I don't feel as scared as I would have. Because I mean, the whole year I was like, wonder what's gonna happen, and then but I would be able to learn every time I did a workshop or attended a webinar. And so I really appreciate those two organizations.
Yeah. And just a quick background, NDI stands for National Disability Institute. We love our friends at NDI. They provide, like what you said, Neena, workshops, small group classes, a variety of webinars and online resources. And they are just a great group to have in your corner as you're working towards your goals.
Yes.
Okay. The last question I have for you is what advice do you have for others, maybe individuals and their teams who are considering gig economy, but they just don't know what steps to take?
So are you talking about someone with a disability or someone with a disability? In particular with Lyft, there's driving. So if you're comfortable driving, you have to kind of decide how many hours you want to drive. Cool thing is you can turn your app on and off anytime you want. There's no big deal. Like if you need to take breaks. Right now, I know that like driving more than 3 hours a day is too much. And so I do 3 hours or less, or even maybe not as many days. So just being really fine tuned with how you feel. There's other types of gig economy that might work for people. Like there's DoorDash, where you're actually getting out of your car, you're lifting things and you're taking it to people. That's different. So, if you have more upper body issues, that might not be such an easy job. Driving's actually not that bad. You have to just kind of see what your body can handle. Steps I would take is yeah, just see, just see which one works for you and which one feels like it works with your lifestyle. It's if you're someone who is trying to, let's say you're trying to start an art business, or let's say you're trying to start some other business. Gig economy is a really good bridge to help you get there because it will help you pay your bills while you're still putting all your time and effort into your dream business or whatever that is that you want to do. It's extremely practical, and I think it's just extremely helpful in life. It has been for me.
Wonderful. Neena, thank you so much for sharing your experience and just your knowledge around gig economy, as well as the different ways that we can support you as an artist. And so I am going to just share that contact screen real quick again.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. It's always a good time when we share space together. Um,
Yes.
I will go ahead and say thank you to the crew that is watching this. Please reach out to Neena, check out Neena's website. And if you are available, be on the lookout for future virtual events that we could tune into.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you so much.
okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and have a good day, everyone.